In all honesty, I've actually always thought that something was wrong with me, because when it comes to arguments about very complex issues, I've always found it difficult to take a side. I've always wondered if that was a lack of chutzpah or motivation or opinion or strength. But so often in my life, since I was a child, I can think of times where people were vehemently arguing about very complex issues as though it was black and white. And as my life has gone, I've started to actually understand that to be a strength in people. I've started to understand the dangers of binary thinking, and we are essentially in the era of binary thinking. Binary thinking in its simplicity is the idea that there are only two possibilities. An example would be, what should I do with my time today? Should I read or should I go for a run? Now, it seems like a simplistic question, but thinking that those are the only two options limits you greatly, because there are so many possibilities. And in the world, we are becoming more and more polarized, which is an interesting subject, because essentially in philosophy, or anyone were to look at the metaphysical side of things, the world essentially is polarized, and in a beautiful way. There is male and female. There is the northern side of the world and the southern side of the world. There's good, there's perceived bad, there is light and dark, there's hot and cold. So it's fair to say that polarization is part of existence. I find it extremely interesting that in most spiritual texts through the ages, they essentially give you this idea that one of the high states of mind is to get to a point where you are able to hold a non-dualistic view, which I don't think is the same as not having an opinion, but I think it's about becoming the union, the meeting place, the precipice point where you understand the nuances of truth and why these issues are complex in the first place. And my favorite example of this, especially looking into the Pashtunads and different ancient texts, is if you look at yourself as a human being, even me that you're looking at, I am symbolically, so powerfully, the union of this polarization, and I'll divulge. I have a left hand and I have a right hand. I have a right leg and a left leg. I have a right lobe and a left lobe, which do completely different things. And I like to think that as a human being, we are this unification of things, so powerfully symbolic of where two seemingly opposing ideas can come together to find some resolution. And I find that so absolutely beautiful. We, as I said in my opinion, are in a bipolar era where we would say that binary thinking is becoming the way. And essentially what binary thinking does is it takes away all the nuance of complex issues. And the reason these issues are complex is because they have so many aspects to them. The reason why they have been taken an age to sort out is because they're not that simple. And we have, very critically for me to say, we've lost our ability to think and to express and to debate openly. And why is this? The dangers of binary thinking and taking a stance on a complex issue, well, they are very, very many, of course. We decide something's right or wrong, something's light or dark, something is up or down. And this creates intense divisiveness amongst people. And as I use the word polarity, essentially the division is becoming absolutely enormous. And this limits us on complex issues. What could we do about this? I mean, these issues are unresolved for a reason, because there's such a myopic possibility of all the issues that are at play, from cultural to historical to... And I guess we have to ask ourselves the question is, am I still able to be a critical thinker? Am I able to have intellectual debates? I find it fascinating that if you look at ancient philosophy and the way they used to debate, the meeting of the minds without anger, they were so aware of how many aspects of a powerful subject were brought together to be of interest. But of course, if we're not able to do this, what happens is it fosters intolerance. And as I said, it creates division. So what that leaves us with is you have to ask yourself, can I think critically? When I discuss a subject, am I able to bring value to it? Now, there are so many things I could bring up, but I'll try and pick one that's a little bit, let's say, triggering nowadays. Let's say vaccines. What a big subject nowadays. To me, to be a critical thinker would be to go, could this be an incredible technology with so much potential that also could be manipulated and used against us, knowing that companies that make these things essentially are after the bottom line? Now, that's not picking the left or the right. That's essentially realizing how many aspects to this there could be. So for me to go, I am anti or pro, which is pretty much, I would say, the temperature of modern times, is an impossibility. So are you able to be a critical thinker? In my perspective, what stops us from being critical thinkers is essentially vulnerability. The ego is in its golden age. And for me to not know something, or to be aware that I might have the wrong perspectives on something, creates an uncomfortable vulnerability in me. So can I be wrong? And can I realize that I might not be completely wrong? And this is a question we can only ask ourselves. But binary thinking is something I caution people against. It is not the left versus the right, and it is not up versus down. And I have a lot of space for people that are able to think and to debate and to see the nuances in all things, and to embrace the complexity and the uncertainty of maybe not knowing. It's one of the most attractive things I can ever hear from someone. I don't really know. And of course, the most powerful version of this is in our interhuman communications and relationships, like marriage, where we really get to glimpse that things are actually never that clear. And are we able to talk them out? And do we essentially have the courage to look at the different aspects that are involved?